Happy hour of Code Week, teachers. This week, our sponsor is a new tool, Metaverse. I'm using this tool in my classroom for my students to program in augmented reality and also to do augmented reality breakout boxes. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more about this free tool. 5 lies I used to believe about teaching, but I don't anymore. Episode 205 in the end of Season 2.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
5 lies I used to believe about teaching, but I don't anymore. Well, the first one is that tests actually measure learning. So I was always a pretty good test taker in high school and in college, although I never really memorized very well. But I really used to think that if I had a 250 question test and the kids got all the answers, that they actually knew the content. That was until a week or two later, I started asking questions about what we tested on and realized that they did not have deep learning. They were just memorizing the facts. Well, we got rid of those big, huge tests, mostly because my curriculum director said I had to, not because I really believed it. And we went to project-based learning. The first big project was the Flat Classroom Project, which went on to win ISTE's award in 2006 for the best online learning project that I co-created with Julie Lindsay, who at the time had been in Bangladesh. And that project was astounding. Did that for several years. And now we do global projects every single year in my classroom and have since 2006. Well, I realized that the learning really doesn't stop now. That students remember much later all the projects they did. They remember the movies they made. They remember the inventions they did. And it really cemented for me when a student who graduated about 8 years ago, he's now a dentist and doing very well. And we sat down and had a conversation at our fall festival recently. And we literally picked up the conversation where we had left off. It was very Socratic. It was very asking questions back and forth. And he said that he had seen some new technology and he wanted to know what I thought about it. And it was literally technology that we had talked about when he was in my classroom. And he and another friend of his had been messaging back and forth and said, "Oh, Miss Vicki's right again about a particular topic." But also what he doesn't remember is that I kind of led them that direction and they came to those conclusions themselves through projects, through invention, through creativity, through learning. And that is true teaching. When somebody comes back and they're 25, 26, and they're still having conversations about the things that you did in class. I mean, he literally told me about the day when I introduced Twitter and what he said. And, you know, he had said not such nice things, that it would never amount to anything. And in this case, he was wrong and I was right. I'm not always right. But I think the point here is that with authentic projects, with making, with inventing, with creating, I really know that I'm teaching much more than I ever did with those 250 question tests. So that's the first thing. I just don't think that those tests really did teach what I thought that they taught. The second one is someone told me don't smile until Christmas. Well, I never was very good at this because I was the Georgia Peanut Princess and I like to smile. But, you know, it's about relationship. It really is. Those early years, I struggled because I did not have the relationship with my students that I have now. And part of it was because I was just so, I hate to say a stick in the mud, but I didn't bring myself to school. I didn't share things to school, you know, with my students at school. In fact, it was kind of a little while before I started sharing a lot of the blogging and things that I was doing in the Twitter and all of this adventure that I go on in my life outside. And we need to have that relationship. And part of that relationship is smiling, and not just smiling, but laughter and having a great time. The third thing is the lie that kids learn just like I did. I think this is a problem that many teachers have. Now, when I was in the business world, one of the first rules of marketing was not to think that everybody is just like you when you're marketing to them, because in marketing or advertising meetings, people would say, well, I wouldn't be interested in that. And you'd look at them and you'd say, well, you're not the target market. Well, you're not the target market, teachers. The brains have literally changed now. They have shorter attention spans. They scan. There's so many things that you can read about brain research, but the kids don't learn like we do. In fact, I'm very visual. A lot of my students are auditory. Some of them are learning to be or not to be for their English teacher, and we'll download that and let them listen to it on their phones as they learn it now. They learn differently. They don't learn like we do. And we need to understand that we are not teaching ourselves. This is not a class class full of mini-me's. This is a class full of unique individuals who learn differently. And not only do they learn differently than we do, they're part of a different generation than we are. So we need to try to get in their minds and understand how they learn and teach to them. The fourth one is that I had to stay on task with content learning 100% of the time. That's a lie that I used to believe because I thought, 52 minutes. And I still will talk to my kids about spending 52 minutes on task. That's very important to me. But there are times to have conversations when tragedies strike, when difficult things happen. There are times when I will stop everything and we'll go on to a different topic that I didn't have in the lesson plan. There are times that kids ask to talk about things. For example, we're doing Hour of Code this week, but I have a little bit of extra time. And a lot of students have been asking me about introverted versus extroverted. So I had a little tool to kind of help them guide through that and talk about the difference between introverts and extroverts. And this was a very important conversation because one of the students took the test and then she looked at her score and found out she was an extrovert. She said, okay, I'm the normal one. And I'm like, no. Introverts and extroverts are both very important parts of the world, and we need each other. And there's no one better than another. We had a great conversation about introverted versus extroverted, the differences, and how we each have something to bring to the world. Well, that wasn't originally on the lesson plan, but if I had stayed on task, if I had said, okay, everything that is content that is in the curriculum, that's what I need to cover, then we would have missed that very valuable lesson. And I can name literally thousands of such lessons that we go on because I am a teacher. Yes, I'm going to cover the content, but do I have to do it 100% of the time? Sometimes those great relationships I mentioned earlier are built when I say, how did you do this weekend? Oh, I'm so proud of you on what you did in one act play. Or why are you not in one act play? Or how's basketball going? Or a kid will come in and say, well, I want to quit basketball. And we have these conversations that are life changing. And I know because now I've been going for 15 years and the kids will come back and tell me. So if all you do is 100% of the time content, I would argue that you're really missing out. And I think a lot of administrators who think that teachers should be 100% all the time on the content are kind of missing out on what that's like. Because if you think about it, if a highway is 100% full 100% of the time, then you have gridlock. Nothing moves. Highways are really more efficient, around 45% to, say 60% full. And then they start really slowing down. So you want to have some room in there for, being a human being and not just a human doing. And I'm not saying sit back and prop your feet up or whatever. And I don't really watch a lot of movies with my students, but we do have purposeful learning and sometimes go off script. And then the fifth one, and this was very hard for me because I came in believing that every single child could make an A in every single class. And, children are different. And I have two kids with learning differences of my own. I have 3 children and 2 of them have learning differences. And I used to think that if somebody wasn't making an A, they just weren't trying hard enough or some other reason. But you know what? I have something I say to kids a lot now, and that is, okay, this is a hard subject for you. Let's get the best that we can get for you, but I want you to understand that something. You are an A as a person. You are important. And whether you make an A in this class or not, if you give every single thing you've got, and the best you can get is a B, or the best you can get is a C, then that has to be enough. And I know tons of successful kids who were C's in high school. And I'm not saying grades aren't important, but there's just so much more to life than just the grades you make in high school. I'm sorry, there just is. And so I've definitely changed my view on that. I'd be interested to know some of the lies that you might have used to believe about learning. But, teaching is hard. Teaching is difficult. I know I talk about that a lot, but teaching is important. I wouldn't trade it for anything. If I was going to add a lie, not about learning, but a lie about teaching, it would be that, the money is not important. It's just a noble profession. And teaching is a very noble profession. But I'll tell you this, I've had to work really, really hard since my kids went to college to make up for the fact that I chose to be a teacher. And it didn't really hit home until my son graduated from college and his starting salary was higher than my salary as a teacher. And, I just think back to when I was 24 and 25, I made about 5 or 6 times what I make now. And sometimes that's hard to handle, especially when You're teaching kids whose parents make a whole lot more than you do. And, there are a lot of people who complain, oh, we don't need to pay teachers anymore. Or, it's just difficult. So I do think that money is important. And I do think that adequately funding education is important. And paying teachers a wage that is deserving of who they are is very important to me. And I think I've dismissed that in the past. So I guess that was a sixth and bonus lie, if you will. And I know some schools do pay well, but many do not. So, but teachers, don't be discouraged. Teaching is a great profession. It's worth it. We make difference every day. I love my students so much. I love teaching them. And I hope that you do too. And I appreciate all that you've done to listen to season 2 of the 10-Minute Teacher, which is now officially ending. This is episode 205, and we're finished with season 2. I would love it and really appreciate it if you would go over to iTunes and leave a review on the 10-Minute Teacher. Now, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be counting down the top 15 episodes of 2017. That's right. So we've had 2 seasons, season 1 and season 2 of the 10-Minute Teacher. And we'll kick up season 3 early in January. But I'm just really grateful for all of you out there who've been listening to the show, who've been encouraging me and all of us involved. I do have to give a shout out to Kip Davis, my husband, who is the producer for the show. He's done an incredible job. I had no idea he would be so good at it. We've learned a lot along the way. I'm sure some of you've noticed who are faithful listeners. So sometimes we've had a few little glitches, but we've learned. We've got Dr. Lisa Durf, who has gotten her doctorate. I got to see her graduate and be draped and everything this summer. I was so proud of her. She's my research assistant. She finds all these amazing people for the show and handles all the bookings. We have Kimberly Mulford, who does all the transcriptions. And if you haven't checked out the show notes, they're really looking awesome now. We have full extended show notes, which helps those who need it for accessibility reasons, but also those who want to quote it for their research papers and that sort of thing as well. So thank you all. And we're also very grateful for all the sponsors who've helped make this possible and fund the show, as well as helping us keep things rolling around here. So thank you all. Thank you for listening to season 2 of the 10-Minute Teacher. And I hope you enjoy all of these encore episodes that will be airing. And my email is always open for you. Email me at Vicki@coolcatteacher.com if you have any suggestions, ideas, or potential guests that you think we should interview. Thanks for listening. Metaverse is an augmented reality tool that my students are using to program. It's simple and free too. But many teachers are using Metaverse as augmented reality breakout EDU activities. These breakout activities are already made and ready for your students to experience. Download the Metaverse app today or go to coolcatteacher.com/AR to learn how to make the magic happen in your classroom. Metaverse is an incredible app and tool for you to use and try this week for Hour of Code.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.